This is
In the Middle of It,
a podcast about
participation culture in Aotearoa.
I'm Cissy from Community Think and Neighbours Aotearoa, and over the last 20 years I've been working in the community. And what I've uncovered is a real desire for people to be in relationship with each other. So we're going to give it a go. A group of us are going to see if we can come up with a participation culture model for Aotearoa. One that really places relationship front and centre in communities, and we see what ideas are generated from people relating and connecting with each other. But I can't do this alone. I've found the best people to make a team with me, and they are the wonderful Lucy Mary Maholland and Duncan Matthews.
Kia ora, I'm Lucy Mary. I am the project facilitator for this participation culture pilot.
Kia ora, I'm Duncan Matthews, an associate with Community Think and the evaluator for this project.
So the invitation is, over the next 6 podcasts, to join us on the participation project as we go deep into the heart of communities in Aotearoa. We're going to bring you recordings from the field, the musings from us in the car journeys, the reflections, and we want you to be with us as we uncover the elements and the conditions that are going to be required for an effective participation culture model for us here in Aotearoa.
I love the metaphor you used the other day of being like PVA glue.
When it's dry, it's invisible, right?
Yeah.
Throw that plan out the window and then be guided by our original principles. Has been really helpful.
You guys had a track record together and that really helped open a lot of doors.
And we could just see potential in everyone. Welcome to episode 1 of In the Middle of It. So Duncan, I find it really hard to know where the beginning is. You know, when we're thinking about our participation culture journey.
Yeah, well, it's kind of emerged, hasn't it, from our working relationship, your working relationship with the DIA, our relationship with Neighbours Aotearoa, and, well, yeah, your 2 decades of community development experience.
But I know that the Department of Internal Affairs funding wasn't the first time that we tried to get funding for this pilot.
No, we did take a smaller version off somewhere else, and that was declined, which really got us to go back and think about, what are we doing?
It put the fire in our belly.
Yes, to prove those first people wrong.
That's right. So I think that's the thing, you know, like here we are right now with a pilot rolling out, but actually...
The journey to get here.
Couple, 2-3 years?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And me and you were so pleased when we got the funding from the Department of Internal Affairs. And we, in a way, I think we thought, well, that's that. Right.
Yep. We've achieved that now.
But probably, I don't know about for you, but for me, one of the hardest things was the recruitment process to find the right sort of project facilitator.
Yes. Yeah, so we knew from the outset that Cissy and I, big ideas people, sometimes we need people to help us execute things. And so we knew we'd need somebody to help hang the whole project together for us. And yeah, we took a few goes at that, didn't we?
And actually, in the end, we found the perfect person.
Yes.
Oh, guys. It's great. It's great to be part of the team. And it was really lovely how I sort of came into this because it was through a mutual contact of ours who made that recommendation. And it sort of feels like that theme of connecting relationally has kind of been pretty strong throughout since then. So yeah, it's been awesome coming on board.
What was it that made you say yes? Because you said yes pretty quickly.
Yeah, and so did you guys.
That's right, we did. It was a mutual yes.
Yeah, when I started sharing some of the stories about the work I'd been doing, working at this community centre and some of the things I was experimenting with, I could see you guys get really lit up. Like, oh yes, that's sort of the lines of what we're wanting to explore. And it was quite validating, I think. It sounded like you guys were also in that kind of experimental space, wanting to try new ways of doing community development. I've got to say that I think that's something I'm finding really interesting about this role is this sort of blend between the project management and that kind of more relational, creative guide thing. Like it's quite a blended role, and that's always kind of been something I've been curious about. Is like, how do you bring more of that relational, creative, systemic thinking into project management roles? But then similarly, how do you bring some of that box ticking and getting things done into that kind of more creative, relational space? That's been really interesting for me, seeing the blend of those two.
Yeah, I was thinking about how I was trying to explain these concepts to people and how I made a Canva video and how useful that's been to go back to, because actually it just has some very simple components in it. And I think there's something in what you're saying about how complex and complicated we try and make things, to how if we have some simple ideas, we go out and we apply, and then we take our learning from them and go, oh, that wasn't so simple after all, or that was actually easier than we thought, you know.
Well, I think we see it often is that we are challenged by a new situation, a new experience, a new problem. And it's when we come back to those simple principles that we began with that it helps us to navigate through. There is no checklist of do this or don't do that, or when this happens, you need to do Y. And so that space to step back, look at what we originally intended, throw that plan out the window, and then be guided by our original principles has been really helpful.
And I guess one of the really important things for us was that we didn't go into a community and say, hello, here we are to help you, that there needed to be some sort of what I was calling a warm handshake. So there needed to be an established something there where people knew what they were up for.
And so we spent a bit of time with the DIA working out who those groups would be, working with some of the local DIA staff in their local offices to figure out who would welcome Cissy and Duncan with open arms.
Yeah, I think the advisors were more working out. I think the advisors really know the communities on the ground. And we had a criteria where we needed communities that were, hadn't already had a whole lot of different organisations and services operating, but also had enough capacity within that community to be able to feel energised by a new idea.
I was going to say, as well as having that warm handshake from the DIA, I noticed that, some of your networks and relationships were really crucial in those early days of setup as well. I think particularly just, in Wellsford, your relationship with local council people there, and just I remember talking with one of them, and she said, I trust Cissy. If Cissy's running this project, I'll support it. It was that you guys had a track record together, and that really helped open a lot of doors.
I heard Hamish Lindop from Auckland Council talking about this UK model, one that I can't pronounce very well, participatory cities.
Participatory city.
Yeah. He talked about this, and he is so passionate about it. And I thought, I think there's something in that, because we're doing all this neighbourhood work. And I did hang out with Hamish a bit, and though I didn't want to wholesale take on a model, and I think I talked to you about that, and I think we worked with Hamish a little bit on some of our Neighbours Day stuff.
Yeah, and I think what we liked about the participatory city model was the intensive focus of it. So the Neighbours Aotearoa work we've been doing is very across Aotearoa, and the idea of what change you could make when you focused 2, 3, 4 people working within a smaller community, and how that could bring benefits to that community was really exciting. And the idea of focusing on participation versus the things we default to, community organizations, elected representatives, strategic plans, a fresh, a different approach to achieving something.
Yeah, because I've written plenty of community plans for communities.
Yes.
But what we noticed was the process of writing the plan, the group coming together, the generating of ideas is really where the potency was. And the plan itself often really does just get left on the shelf. So, this was a big inspiration, I think, alongside all the work that I've done. Particularly, I would like to reference Inspiring Communities here with the community-led development principles, the Department of Internal Affairs and their CLD partnerships. So they had a program where they're partnering with communities, and we started to see what rose to the surface and had traction, and where there were moments of, wobbliness.
One thing that really attracted me to this role was hearing you guys speak about this, the participatory cities work in the UK, but you were really framing it as we want to be inspired by this and not try and replicate it, because we want to find what what is going to organically emerge if we just take inspiration from that concept, but let something natural emerge that actually makes sense for Aotearoa.
It's a real tension, isn't it? Because almost to get traction, people want a proven concept, but we want something that comes from Aotearoa, that's in the context of where we are here with Te Tiriti. And so you kind of want to have something that derives from, but is actually driven and led by, Indigenous ideas or things that happen when you're in a little island in the Pacific. Like something that always stood out to me with overseas models is the desire to organise assemblies or events where politicians will come so that the locals can talk to the politicians. We just have to go to a local cafe. We know where our politicians drink coffee and we can go and chat to them. So we're much more able to access things that some of the other international models can't even get hold of.
And so I think we should take a minute to introduce the 3 locations we're working in. Lucy Mary, you introduced Wellsford already. And Cissy, you've got a bit of a history with Wellsford.
Yeah, I've worked in Wellsford before because Wellsford's actually part of the Auckland region. It's the sort of last town on the edge before you leave Auckland.
As you're driving north.
You're driving north. So I've driven through there many times because I lived up north. But I've also worked there with the local people when, just as I was exiting Auckland Council, actually. So, quite a few years ago now, I guess.
And if we head the opposite way from Tamaki Makaurau, we get to Kirikiriroa, Hamilton, which is where our second location is over in Glenview. I was super pleased to be working in Hamilton again. It's where I grew up in the Waikato and went to university in Hamilton, and so it's quite cool to be back there. And selecting Glenview, there's quite an interesting way that the people we asked to work in the region with us ended up sort of redefining what Glenview is.
Yeah, that's right. So they really, I think, kind of took on board, we're working a little bit with Johnny Freeland's concept of binocular vision, of really making space for a Te Ao Māori lens to come alongside a tangata tiriti lens and how we might co-navigate together. And they sort of really took this invitation up and started to think about reframing Glenview, still looking at the same geographic area, but actually talking about it in terms of Manga ko Tukutuku, which is the river system that runs through that area. And it is kind of, when you look at it on the map, you're like, oh yeah, there is, that river does kind of sort of define that area, because it sort of felt like, yeah, the boundaries were a bit fuzzy. In fact, all of our locations, it was kind of a bit difficult to sort of say, to draw a line around them and say, this is the area. I think that was kind of a challenge in the beginning, was actually trying to work out where are we working? Yes, where are the boundaries?
Nowhere better represented than closer to your current town, Lucy Mary of Hoonhay, which, as we're trying to define that, actually has 3 different statistical areas for the nerdy person like me who was trying to look those things up.
That's right, yeah. So I live just in the suburb next to Hoonhay in Spraydon. And yeah, what we found with Hoonhay was that our sense of Hoonhay as being one place was actually got challenged when we started working there and realising that there was kind of 2 distinct areas that had their own identity, their own sort of ways of being, and that we actually had to sort of shift our approach and how we set the project up to work with that dynamic. Yeah.
And a lot of that was based on some of the relationships we developed or had already in the region.
When we found out the 3 communities, and we had asked that they were about 2,000 people, so there had been some criteria we'd set up. The first thing that we did is scan our own networks and identify who we knew, whether it was in the DIA, the council, local community groups, and let them know, hey, we've got this opportunity, and so that we had people within the community reaching out within the community. And this did end up being to our advantage in the Hoonhay Rowley area, because we had people on the ground who had that depth of history, who were able to help us navigate what could have been, a potential mess, but actually ended up being a huge strength.
So the way we're actually working in these different locations is by recruiting people into the role of a People Weaver is what we decided to call it. And these are local people who live in the area with real passion for their community, don't necessarily need to have huge experience in working with communities, but just that feel for, can these people get alongside other people in their community? Can they be curious and listen and be open and sort of support other people in their community to bring activities to life? So that was what we're doing. We're recruiting these teams of local people, again, using our networks of relationships to see who was out there, and we found them.
What I like about the name is actually it came from the recruitment process. You know, we were, talking to people. I think at one point, so like a people weaver. Yeah, like a people weaver. So it was a very organic, and it wasn't like we had to really reject anyone, because it was like the right number of people applied for the right roles, and we could just see potential in everyone.
Yeah. I love the metaphor you used the other day of being like PVA glue. Can you say more about that?
Oh, yes, I was saying that the work that we do is like PVA glue. When it's done, when it's dry, it's invisible, right?
Yeah. That's always the image I get of those people weavers being, sort of in the background. They're not the ones up front, kind of big, flashy, organised. They're in the background, just making connections, helping people find each other, just connecting the dots. Quite a
very skilled job, actually. Because these people are having to be able to reach out, build rapport, be in the background.
Yeah.
Make assessments. So I think we are incredibly lucky to have such a range of really talented people as part of our team.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And passionate. I think they all just care so much about their community. I think that was something that really shone through with all of them. We heard the other day, right? Someone said, I'm going to be here forever. I care.
Yeah. You can't bottle and sell passion, can you?
We keep talking about them. Shall we drop in and have a bit of a listen to some of what we've been doing with them?
So this is Jalen and Libby from Wellsford.
Let's say we're putting on a community meal, right?
Yeah.
There'll be the same 7 people that we know will come.
Right.
What about your next door neighbour that actually needs you to say, "No, come on, I'm taking you out for the night."
Yeah.
Bring the kids. This isn't bring the kids. There's a kids' table. We've got jelly and ice cream for them. That is what people weaving's about. And then maybe when she's there, she meets one other person and goes, "Oh God, I'm just like you. I'm stuck at."
Or someone that says, "I've always wanted to look after a baby. Can I look after your baby?"
Yeah.
She gets a break.
And even if you don't lure them out that time, their friend might have gone and said, "Hey, this was really good." Yes. And then the next time something happens, they go, "Hey, why don't you come along? I'll drive you," or whatever.
Yeah. And so, but we're wanting to create things that, allow that bumping to happen, but they're not slick. Here's your ticket, $10. It's like, this is a community meal. It might just be coleslaw and
chicken buns.
Yeah. The good thing about this project is it's less about creating things for other people.
Yeah.
And more about creating spaces for people to come together.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to, have 17 young people played soccer.
Yeah.
It could be 5 parents drank coffee together and just felt a lot better about understanding. And while they were drinking coffee, Jalen let them know about the trust at the school.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And then 2 people managed to get uniforms.
Yeah.
Yes, and then they didn't have to go for a food parcel because they could have saved their money for food and not uniforms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when they said that's great, someone else said, I feel so shy about going for food parcels. And then someone else says, well, let's actually go and get 2 or 3 food parcels and cook all our food together.
Yes.
Like that. And that's all just 5 people, but they're doing, and then 2 more people come and join them as they're cooking their parcels together. And then 2 people take that extra food to their neighbours. So it's not so much about an activity.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got this great arts event or this. We're going to help you put on a show. It's more about what are the conditions that allow people to come together and share.
Yeah.
And what comes from that sharing.
Let's check in with Tui, Nay and Charles based in Glenview.
And where is the library at the mall? So that wall's a very important part.
Coming to realise that very much so.
Yeah,
It's very much a hub.
The hub,
A hub,
the
yeah,
hubs,
for like of
Yeah.
like Lindsay Hamilton sound like
It's
so
really
many different
homely.
people. Yeah. And even when I was looking there, like you know how like in Auckland, like at some of them malls, like it's just
It's like
really
Southmore.
bad.
It reminds me of
It
Southmore.
kind of is, but I just feel like it's more upkept, like it's more looked after. Whereas
Yeah.
like you know some of the malls in Auckland, you're like,
Got
walking in there.
cops
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
There's something I was just sort of witnessing about hearing you guys talk, that there's this real barrier when the corridor or the engagement has to go up to the council level. That because there's pain and trauma and mistrust, it's sort of like going up to that level, it kind of blocks, and then the sort of. But I just had this wondering about, I think the kind of real spirit of this project is sort of, it's not ignoring that higher level, but it's also saying like, what if we just went directly to at the neighbour to neighbour level?
Well, that's what I kind of see what Sis is doing and engaging with these people, because she's mana whenua as well. She's connected to this land through her whakapapa, but she's taken the conscious decision to do exactly what you've done, just to go straight over there, engage with these fellows. What are you up to? Oh, I'll get amongst it.
That's what I
think. Like that, so it's quite powerful, the step that you've taken, Sis, because that's exactly what you've done. Because we've got our stuff over here, you're aware of it, but these fellows over here are doing it. And it's beautiful mahi. It is.
I love
obviously with
that.
a good heart, and the fact that you've taken the step to go over there, people will notice. People will notice, and they might go, "Oh, what's Tui up to?" But I'm no doubt
Like, no photos, please.
no doubt you'll be able to kind of just stand in your mana and do what you do, and at the end of the day, it's our awa and tapatua and all that stuff. So,
Well, that's it. Episode
1.
done. Tune in next week. We're going to be diving into a little bit more around what we've noticed about community development in Aotearoa and how it led us to this mahi.
Listen in if you want the scoop.
See you next time.
Bye.
Thanks goes to 104.6 Planet FM Community Access Radio Auckland for their excellent recording studio and guidance in producing this podcast. The music is Pistoriosis by Shane Ivers of soundmanmusic.com, Mal Johannesson for bringing together draft episodes, Mish Maskol for their audio engineering expertise, and our weavers Libby, Jalen, Charles, Tui, Nay, Holly, Lisa, Ray and Carol, some of whom appeared on this episode.